Hello, my name is Jamie Geese. I live at 5550 Ashford Road. I'm here to comment on Ordinance 114-14 passed by City Council on December 8th. As you may already know, my family has been in Dublin for 8 generations, since settling here over 200 years ago. I grew up in Dublin, moved away for schooling and training, and I finally returned when I decided to marry and raise a family.
So, and I really take offense at this. Somebody who was personally threatened, who has had lawsuits against me in my years of serving this government, to hear somebody come up and talk about, oh, well, there's some kind of relationship. No, there isn't. These people up here are trying to build the future of this community to keep it progressive and modern and something that you want to live in. And that's our obligation. If we keep it the way it is, if any of you went to the meeting they had downtown at the Metropolitan Club, they explained to you that if you don't change the city, your city will fail. And we're trying to make this city the progressive city that it deserves to be, and we have spent our lives working on that. And I was party to all the laws that you mentioned, Jamie, the signage laws, the landscape laws, and every one of those laws. And we stuck our necks out, as you said, and we made a lot of people very unhappy coming up with progressive legislation. And this thing we're doing now is not a damn bit different from those days in the early 80s when I wrote a lot of those laws or either approved those laws. So that's what we're about, and that's what we're trying to get done here. Thank you.
Mayor Lee has a question. There's just so much misinformation. Even the comments that we just heard, I believe I heard Mr. Geese say the new ART being formed. It's hardly new. ART's been around for, gosh,
a couple of years.
At least longer than that even.
A long time, yeah.
A long time, 3 or 4 years, I would say. So I know people get upset with change, and even something as minuscule as a park in a neighborhood, we hear from residents that say it's going to attract a bad element, it's going to create trash, it's going, I mean, a park, for heaven's sakes. You know, it's interesting, there's no dissension on this council at all, and there's a tremendous amount of experience on this council. Many, many years of service for at least 4 or 5 here on Planning and Zoning Commission as well. You would think that if this was so far off base that we would have some dissension, and this council is absolutely in lockstep.
If I
These development agreements
people have left the meeting.
are not the result of any private negotiation between council or any council members. I repeat, not the result of any private negotiation between council and the developers. Any exchange that we have with the applicant, the developer, occurs in a meeting just like this, nowhere else. Okay? So, you know, I don't know where the suggestion is coming from, you know, that there is, you know, some good old boy sort of thing going on here, but it's not happening here, and it's not happening with this council.
I'll note I was chair of P&Z for a number of years, and I remember when you know, the hospital came. I remember, Tim, you were chair before me with respect to Cardinal, that development agreements are not something new in this community. You know, P&Z still did its thing, still vetted these projects, still required developers to a high level quality product.
The review of every project that will eventually go into Bridge Street is no different, is that right?
That's correct.
There's just as an intense P&Z review, public input, all those things.
Yes, and the only thing that was changed was where there's a development agreement with a Bridge Street project, that City Council reviews those basic plan reviews first.
Hello, my name is Jamie Geese. I live at 5550 Ashford Road. I'm here to comment on Ordinance 114-14 passed by City Council on December 8th. As you may already know, my family has been in Dublin for 8 generations, since settling here over 200 years ago. I grew up in Dublin, moved away for schooling and training, and I finally returned when I decided to marry and raise a family. I chose to return to Dublin not only because of my family roots here, but also because Dublin is a unique and special city. I have personally seen Dublin transform from a village in the 1970s into the wonderful, thriving city it is today. This change did not happen by random chance, but instead, it was a result of the hard work, wisdom, forward-thinking, and integrity of previous City Council and Planning and Zoning members. My father served on both Planning and Zoning and City Council for 13 years during the 1970s and 1980s. I recall him missing several family dinners because he was attending meetings and often bringing his city work home in the evening. Previous City Council members, such as my father and others like him, with input from the Planning and Zoning Commissioners, made decisions that had profound impact on the development of the city. Simple decisions such as the passage of restrictive sign ordinances, requiring new developments to preserve existing trees and incorporate green space, requiring the construction of bike paths in all developments, and conservative limits on housing. Ordinances such as these were unheard of at the time and are just a few examples of decisions made many years ago that helped to create the Dublin of today. The overriding philosophy of previous City Council and Planning and Zoning members was controlled development to improve the city, not just development for the sake of growing the city. This was a team approach with both City Council and Planning and Zoning each having its own appropriate role. This process works exceptionally well for the past 50 years. It is from this perspective that I view City Council's recent amendment to the plan review process in the Bridge Street District, otherwise known as Ordinance 114-14. As a concerned and informed resident, I believe the decision made by City Council, and I look at the decision made by City Council, and for the best of me, I cannot see how it helps either the city or its residents. Developers have never been happy with the standards imposed by the city. All these standards imposed by the city cut into the developer's profit. But at the same time, it is these very standards which have led to the creation of current-day Dublin. The role of planning and zoning is and always has been to ensure that developments and developers improve or at a minimum maintain the quality of the city. The members of planning and zoning are not city employees. In contrast to the newly created members, or in contrast to the members of the newly created ART, and they're not elected officials, such as the members of City Council, who need to be concerned with the opinions of their electorate. They are private citizens who volunteer their time. As such, they're much less likely to be influenced by coercion or pressure from developers or other outside interests. Their job security or re-election is not on the line. It is this very fact that has allowed previous planning and zoning commissioners to help create the city we have today. Because they are required to uphold the standards for the development within the city, planning and zoning has in essence been the bad cop in the eyes of developers. However, because of their presence, City Council is relieved from assuming this role. I'll remind you again that this has worked exceptionally well for the past 50 years. The City of Dublin is blessed to have many highly qualified citizens with integrity who are willing to volunteer their time to serve in the Planning and Zoning Commission. As a result of City Council's decision, 4 of these highly qualified individuals, who in my review of recent Planning and Zoning meeting minutes seem to be the ones asking many of the hard questions, have now resigned. Currently, there are 4 vacancies on the Planning and Zoning Commission, which the city is required to fill. However, the city now faces the challenge of recruiting qualified citizen volunteers in an environment of controversy. I pray that 4 equally qualified individuals with a high level of integrity are willing to fill these vacancies, though I will admit I'm not optimistic. My fear is that because of this ordinance, the city has handicapped its ability to ensure that development within the Bridge Street District is of a high standard expected by the citizens of Dublin. One could argue that given the significant amount of taxpayer money being invested, development in the Bridge Street District being held to a high standard is inadequate. And instead, development should be held to an even higher standard in order to justify the city's significant expense. From where I am standing, I do not see how this ordinance has been beneficial to the city or its residents. Thus far, the city's explanation for the need for the amendment has consisted of the first 4 paragraphs of Ordinance 114-14 itself, which, when read in their entirety and interpreted in plain English, say essentially nothing, and a frequently asked questions webpage on the city website that explains the changes, but not their significance, and does nothing to explain the reason such a change was needed in the first place. Thus far, no convincing explanation of the need for a change has been presented. Dublin citizens expect and deserve an explanation. The general concern is that this change was made to appease developers in the Bridge Street District, an action which is not consistent with the type of government that helped create this wonderful city we live in today. I will leave you with two questions tonight, the answers to which many informed residents want to know. Why was Ordinance 114-14 passed into law? And how is this ordinance good for the City of Dublin and its residents, not just now, but for the next 50 years? If City Council cannot give citizens of Dublin good answers to these questions, I feel it is their duty to repeal Ordinance 114-14. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.